Hey everybody, this is the Total Package. Lex Luger with an exclusive, in-depth interview on my career with the Hannibal TV. I really look forward to this interview.
This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com, and today I am here in the home of multiple-time world champion, former WWE and WCW superstar, the Total Package himself, made in the USA, Lex Luger. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you.
And you're back in Buffalo. This is obviously where you're from, but how long have you been back living here?
I am back in beautiful Buffalo, as I call it, Devin, and having a great time. I've back here, wow, almost 4 years now.
Wow.
So, never anticipated coming back, but it's been a real homecoming for me with a lot of my friends I grew up with, and they always billed me from Chicago, and but obviously born and raised actually in Buffalo. So it's funny when I used to come back to wrestle in Buffalo. Buffalonians are no nonsense, blue collar town. They'd boo me out of the building whether I was a heel or a babyface, because they thought I'd abandoned my roots, coming back as being billed from Chicago when they all knew I was from Buffalo. It was funny when I wrestled here. My family would come, I'd be a babyface and they'd all be booing me. But it's good to be back. They have forgiven me, and it's great to be back. I actually lived in mostly Atlanta for the better part of over 3 decades, and I kind of missed the change of seasons. And when I first got back to Buffalo, I really wanted a lot of snow because I hadn't been around snow hardly at all. And they're all going, people didn't know me, go, "Are you really from here? You want more snow?" And so I was saying, "Yeah, I want some real snow." Well, we got it. So in the past 4 winters, I've gotten a real feel for it. Now, I must admit, by around January now, it's like, okay, I'm okay. I'm cool with the winters now. You can start lightening up, but I love it being back here, and people talk about the weather, but great people in Buffalo. They call it the Queen City, the city of good neighbors, and it's really true. And I'm having a great time back here in Buffalo. Made a lot of new friends, and having a great time hanging out with my mom. I came back with the passing of my dad, and I just didn't feel led to leave, and I just came back, and I've been hanging out with my mom. We're having a great time. She's a hoot to hang out with, so it's been really, really good.
So growing up here, what was your childhood like?
Had a great childhood, a great family. Both set of grandparents. My great-grandparents on my dad's side came over from Germany. My grandparents, my mom's side, from Scotland, and just all my roots are here. I'm living right now right down the street from my great-grandfather's farm. It was farmland. It's not farmland anymore, but his farm, a community college, sits on his farmland now. And I felt when I came back like I was kind of blooming again where I was planted. And growing up here, a lifelong avid Bills fan, Buffalo Bills fan. My older brother, he's 5 years older than me, used to drag his little brother along. I was a little kid. We'd go down to the Bills games at the old stadium called the Rock Pile. But now we have a different stadium, but great memories of that. Then the Sabres came along. I love hockey, obviously, being a Buffalo Sabre fan. And I love sports growing up, and played football, basketball, and ran track and field in high school, and just great memories growing up here.
I've read on the internet, it says that at one point in time you were considering possibly going into professional soccer because you were such a good soccer player. Is any truth to that?
No, none whatsoever. I don't know where they got that from. Sometimes you look, if once in a while somebody will say something about, "I read on your Wikipedia," I'm like, well, not everything, because anybody can go into Wikipedia and put anything they want on there. So there's been all kinds of stuff on Wikipedia, crazy stuff through the years. I think a lot of it's still on there, but one of the rumors, I don't know if that one's on Wikipedia, but I heard you were going to be a professional soccer player. I go, well, no, I was interested in a lot of things, but I do love, so I'm a big Manchester United fan, so I love soccer, but never played it. Other than like a little bit, around the neighborhood, but never considered or thought I'd be a professional soccer player. So that's totally false.
All right, so if anyone watching this knows how to change Wikipedia, maybe they could help Lex out on there.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. They have to sit with me. And I don't even know how they do that. I guess they can be edited, but mine is so long, and there's so much true stuff, and then there's so much stuff that's not, which doesn't bother me. It's no big deal.
Now, you started off playing for Penn State, I guess, when you started your college football career. When did the college scouts start recruiting you in high school, and what made you choose Penn State?
You know, they didn't look at me till my senior year. I wasn't going to play football my senior year. I was going to specialize in basketball. I was wanted to play in the NBA. I grew up, we had a pro basketball team here at the time, Buffalo Braves. I think they're the Clippers now. But I wanted to be a basketball player, and I really loved playing hoops. But I've met him since. Both my football coaches had an assistant coach. Met me at a breakfast I was speaking at here locally, and they surprised me. I didn't know if they were still around. When I first came back, they showed up at a Saturday morning breakfast, like at 8 o'clock, at a church I was speaking at, and the head coach played football at Syracuse, and he took me aside when he found out I wasn't going to play football my senior year and said, you know, if you ever applied yourself with a portion of the effort you put into basketball, football, he goes, you could probably maybe go to any college you wanted to. So I really would encourage you to go out for football, because we had another couple guys ended up playing both in the NFL as well. Jim Burt played nose tackle for the Giants Super Bowl team, and Craig Wolfley, team of mine, played 13 years for the Steelers. All three of us were on the same high school team, so they were getting looked at. And so I ended up going out and really applied myself my senior year, and I ended up getting offers from all over, because they'd come to look at Craig Wolfley and Jim Burton, and they said, and coach said, you should take a look at this guy. And I credit a lot to my coach and to those two guys for getting me looked at, and I ended up getting all kinds of scholarship offers from really, really good schools. So, and a funny thing, as a side note, in a drill right at the beginning of my senior year, which I would have had to have a big year to try to get the kind of offers in basketball I wanted, I tore the ligaments in my shooting hand.
Oh.
I missed almost the whole season, my senior year.
So it was a good
So
thing.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up. I got to take all those recruiting trips, because I didn't have to go to practice all the time because I couldn't. And I told Coach Winkie, my high school football coach, man, the importance that you coaches have had on my life and many others, you spoke into my life. I never thought of myself as a football player. I thought of myself as a basketball player who played football, because my friends went out for it.
Yeah.
We didn't specialize as much back then. You played sports in season. My love was basketball. I thought of myself as a basketball player, and he spoke into my life about being a football player. And you know, I don't think there would have been a Lex Luger. I told him that when I spoke that morning, there wouldn't have been a Lex Luger speaking right now at this church, because if I hadn't played football, I don't think I would have got into the weight training the way I did, and everything that football laid the foundation for me. That was a bridge for me into wrestling. So that was pretty neat. Another great part. I'll come back to Buffalo.
And I understand your weight training actually started around the senior year of high school.
It did. Another great friend. Two friends I've been reunited. Tom Haney was an exercise physiologist who started helping me train my senior year in high school when I started focusing on football. And Don Reinhout. I don't know if anybody's watched the World's Strongest Man contest on TV. He won that. He was a super heavyweight world champion powerlifter. Was like the biggest, strongest guy I'd ever seen in my life, and maybe to this day still. He was like 6'3", 350 pounds. He had traps the size of grapefruits. He was an incredible guy. He spent time with myself, Craig Wolfley, and Jim Burt, and we drive out about an hour away from here in Dunkirk, Fredonia area outside of Buffalo. And we drive there and train with him a couple times a week. He allowed us to train with them, and we learned so much for him. And it was a real foundation for me, the strength training and the powerlifting that I did in the off season and during football. which I think really led a lot into a great foundation for me in the training I did, which was different, but training I did in wrestling as well, for obviously my physique, my weight training, a big part of who I was as Lex Luger. So Coach Winky, and then Tom Haney, the exercise physiologist, who I just met with a little last week,
Right.
and been reunited with Tom, great guy, and Don Reinhardt. Just, you connect the dots of what went into me becoming the Lex Luger that I became from Larry Folt.
Yeah, you were blessed, because I remember when I started working out, I thought doing machines one day and free weights the next was actually a good split.
Yeah.
And you had like the top of the line people teaching you from the start.
And then when you go to college, you get great strength and nutrition coaches there, and so at the professional level as well. So that in combination, I had a lot of great mentoring and tutoring on training and nutrition.
What are some of your all-time best lifts in like the bench press, deadlift, and squat, let's say?
I never maxed out in the bench. Because once I was in even football, I didn't want to risk injury. But if I had to guess what I could have maxed out in the bench, probably mid-fives, and which was pretty good back then.
Yeah.
And then I was a good squatter. I squatted with the officially, like, now I had a power suit and a big belt on and everything, but over 800 pounds for a single.
Wow.
In the squats. I never did deadlifts for max because didn't want to risk like a lower back injury or anything. I used to have some lower back issues now and then, so I never went super heavy. I did for football more power cleans and hang cleans. So.
What's your opinion on knee wraps and these things that help you lift more? Is it worth it, or do you think it's better to lift with as little help as possible?
You can go either way on that. I didn't overdo it with the suits or the wraps, and we didn't have the advancements we have now and that stuff. Now some of the things they wear to bench press and squatting are like the materials they use and stuff are, it's crazy what they've come up with, which helps their lifts a lot, which, hey, if they allow it in competition, it's allowed. I was kind of I guess back then you would say I was the advocate of, I'd like to wrap my knees. Not super tight, but I like to wrap my knees. It felt, that always felt good. And I'd wear some wrist wraps of some type, but that was about it for me. Okay. I might wear on my bench day, I might wear a little bit like a tighter shirt or a double shirt, like tight.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I went with that.
So why did you only spend a year at Penn State?
Growing up in Buffalo at the time, of course, here I am back in Buffalo, but I'd been heavily recruited by Miami, and I knew the coaches down there, and I just felt that the opportunity at the time, and I felt that the weather was a big draw.
Right.
So I was young and impulsive, and I wanted to go to Sunshine U. So after my freshman year at Penn State, which is a great school and a great football program, but I was longing for the sunshine and palm trees, so I transferred down to Miami. I like to say there was some great reason, but it was mostly the weather.
Yeah.
At the time.
And I guess at that time, Miami was a real party area in general, and it's known, of course, for the cocaine as well. But did you experience any of that party atmosphere? I know you were an athlete, but...
Well, yeah, Miami's known as a party school, so it was a lot. I had a lot of fun, that's for sure. But my main focus was football, and so we drink a little on the weekends with the guys and stuff like that. But there wasn't a big drug culture amongst the football players when I went there at all. I know we were in South Florida.
Yeah.
I used to work the nightclubs for spending money. Yeah. I'd work the front door at some of the big clubs in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. I knew there was a big, I had a lot of contact with drug dealers and drug users, and so I knew that was it was big down there in South Florida at the time, in the late 70s, early 80s. But I was more focused on football at the time.
So between the bouncing at the hot nightclubs and a star football player, I'm guessing you had no shortage of women in those days.
Well, there was a lot of beautiful co-eds that went to Miami and at the clubs and everything. Yeah, but I actually got into a pretty serious relationship early on. I had a girlfriend at Penn State, then a fiance.
Okay.
So I kind of had made a commitment to her earlier on. So I didn't really partake in all that at the time.
So why did
There
you...
was opportunity, but I didn't partake in it.
Yeah, what ended up that you actually, I guess, got kicked out of Miami, which seems very hard to do because it was known as a bit of a party school.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, how'd you get kicked out of Miami? I go, well, it took a lot. I'd say it was more the drip, drip, drip. I just had different stuff that I got caught doing and disciplined for, and just stuff, wild, crazy stuff kids do at college. We vandalized our own on-campus apartment one time. And so coach, I got in trouble at a hotel doing some pranks with my roommates at a hotel, and we messed up one of the rooms, and so it was nothing that sounds crazy, but it was cumulative for the coach wanted to discipline me at the time, Lou Saban, the head coach, and so he suspended me from the team because, which looking back now in hindsight was he was just trying to get me back in line. But as soon as he suspended me, I said, well, I was here to play football, so I withdrew from all my classes and started working full time at the clubs in Lauderdale. I moved in with my brother, who was living in Lauderdale at the time.
Wow.
So my brother Barry, so I dropped out of school, and I learned later, the coach said, well, we didn't mean to drop out of school, and I guess the original intention was get my attention, rein me in, and by disciplining me and have me come back and win my spot in spring ball.
So you ended up from there, I guess, going in up to Canada, in the area where I'm from, up to Montreal to play pro football. How did that opportunity arise?
Yeah, I could have gone back to college, but I was working the clubs in Lauderdale, and some alumni, I don't remember his name, knew one of the scouts from Montreal, and he looked at my game films from Miami, told him about what, I was always had, when the combine type guys would come in and test me at Miami, I always, pretty much for my position as a lineman, down lineman, tested off the charts, my vertical and my speed. And
what was your speed like?
I could do, when I was at Green Bay, I think I clocked a 4.6.
Oh wow!
Which back then for a 275, 80 pound lineman was fast.
Yeah.
So, and I did good at the standing broad jumps. All the measurements they do. So, I already kind of had that going for me. So the guy at Montreal looked at my film, and the alumni told him about my athleticism, and said, you might have a raw one here. And they offered me a contract, and I didn't even think about it. I went up there not knowing the rules, that there was only so many Americans, and only so many Americans at my position, and I just said, wow, opportunity to play pro ball, why not? I was 19 years old, so
yeah.
So I signed and went up to Canada with the Montreal, at the time, Alouettes.
Was the pay for playing football in Canada at the time better than bouncing at a hot club in Florida?
Probably not. But I looked at, in my book I talk about it, the crowd I was with around those clubs.
Yeah.
And I was getting offers to do like bodyguard stuff.
Yeah.
For people that were in that business and everything, and
yeah.
that's a road. I still looked myself as an athlete who was bouncing. Right. So I was like, when I got the offer to go to Montreal, I had to make that decision which way I was going to go, and I chose the path of stay. If I had that, here's an opportunity to stay in football, and if I make it, I make it. If I don't do it, I always come back down here. So I felt I had nothing to lose to try it, and it just worked out incredible. The line coach at Montreal took a real liking of me, and they kept me around. So it worked out.
I guess you were there for 3 years total?
Yeah. Love Montreal, great city. Had some great times there. Got married right after my rookie year to Peggy, my wife, and it was very fond memories of playing. CFL football was a blast. I really enjoyed it.
And I remember being at the Montreal WCW show in '96. You came out in the Alouettes jersey, and I think other than Hulk Hogan's pop that night, I think you definitely got the second biggest pop of the night.
I resorted to that in Montreal. Wow. There we go. Why not, right?
So any memory that stands out from Montreal, because I know a lot of people from Montreal are going to watch this.
Oh man, the food. There was a rib place. I think it was Barbie Barnes or something.
Yeah. Just
the food and the atmosphere there. I lived right down at this high-rise condominiums, right down the city, right near what used to be called the Forum.
Yeah.
It was called the Haddon Arms. It was a really nice kind of pool on the rooftop you could lay up to in the summer, and just overall great memories. And going down to Old Montreal, the district, there's a couple of really good restaurants I used to love to go to there, and just the culture and the food and the people. I loved Montreal.
Do you speak any French?
I don't. Montreal is bilingual, so I didn't have to learn any French really. Once in a while with food, I learned a few things, to order. But no, I never became bilingual. Now, if I stayed there my whole career, it probably would have been a great idea to become bilingual. I thought that would have been great. I think the fans would have liked it. So I would probably definitely considered that if I'd stayed there longer.
And I understand you played in a Grey Cup against Edmonton.
Yeah, my rookie year, I got to start in the Grey Cup, and I played against Dr. Death. Dave Fennell was his name. He was an all-pro lineman, and he was injured at times, and I had a really good game against him, so he kind of put me on the map with the coaches at Montreal. And I was glad he wasn't 100%, because he didn't have the name Dr. Death for nothing. He had a great career and a really good player. Warren Moon was their quarterback, who's now a Hall of Famer, and from the NFL. They had a really good team. We lost, but it was great to be in a Grey Cup in our hometown in Montreal. I have very fond memories of that for sure.
How did you end up getting the opportunity with Green Bay after that?
I became a free agent, and the first team I tested with was Green Bay, and they offered me a contract, and I signed within like 2 days.
Okay.
Got injured there, and only stayed there less than 2 seasons, but that was the first team I tested with, and I loved the coach, and the atmosphere there was like a Green Bay is like a college atmosphere, so I loved that because I feel like I didn't really get my full college atmosphere, so I was at Green Bay. So great fans, had a great time there. Unfortunately, I got injured, a couple of injuries when I was there, but definitely I had a great opportunity there, but I got injured, and at the time, the Spring Football League, the Donald Trump League, with Herschel Walker, and they called it, and the USFL, and my rights were offered to Tampa Bay Bandits, which was outdrawing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time in the NFL, and they owned my rights, and they offered me a contract, and I was not unhappy to go back down to Florida, so I had fun there, playing football in the USFL for a couple seasons. Played at Tampa and also Memphis.
Okay, and Memphis, I understand a lot of people were confusing you to be a wrestler when you were walking around.
They did. Memphis was a wrestling town, and I didn't grow up really watching pro wrestling. My grandfather was a big pro wrestling, but he used to kick us out of the room when he watches pro wrestling because he didn't want us to bother him or distract him.
Oh, wow.
I always remember that. My grandpa, my dad's side.
Buffalo's a wrestling city too, historically.
Elio DiPaolo was one of my teammates of football's dad. We used to have our football banquet there. He was like, everybody loved Elio. So I knew about wrestling, obviously, but I didn't really grow up watching it. And Memphis was a new experience for me. They had a real fever pitch about wrestling. So I guess because I loved working out, I guess I looked more like a wrestler than a football player almost. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of muscle mass, but I was pretty lean.
Did you have the long hair at that time?
Not really, no. Maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just get mistaken about, are you a pro wrestler? All the time I got stopped there in Memphis, which made me think about maybe looking into that, into wrestling. At the time, I thought about maybe there's something to that wrestling thing. Then I saw, obviously, the WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. I read about how they'd broken the indoor attendance record and everything. So that's when I started really like watching wrestling when I was in Memphis, and I watched the local and started watching some of the WWE stuff. We have it on in the locker room. The guys loved it. So that's when I really thought, wow. And a lot of the guys go, well, man, you'd be great at that. Even the football players, you'd be great at pro wrestling. It's like, well, maybe, which appealed to my ego back then. Well, maybe I would be good at that. So that's when the first thoughts came into my mind of entertaining the possibility of being a pro wrestler when I was in Memphis, really.
So I understand your football USFL career was coming to an end, I guess, and you ran into Bob Roop or something, and he helped get you into wrestling. That's what it says anyways.
That was in Wikipedia, and I know Bob, and Bob was a big part of my early career. He was like one of the bookers my first year in Florida, but we traveled some together, but Bob had nothing to do with my training. Hiro Matsuda trained me, and I just walked in off the streets to the office down in Florida, which was World Championship Wrestling in Florida. We had a lot of good independent organizations back then. Championship Wrestling in Florida was one of them. I just walked in off the street, and name was Danny. He was a former retired pro wrestler. I'm trying to remember his last name, but anyways, he took one look at me and called up Hiro Matsuda, who had trained Hogan and Paul Orndorff, a lot of the wrestlers down there at a factory nearby, garment factory. And he told me to go over and talk to Hiro Matsuda. So I walked in, talked to Hiro Matsuda, sat down with him for about an hour, and he told me to come back and get ready to break a sweat. And he was like amazing. He doesn't take guys in the ring a lot of times for a year at a time before he even takes them in the ring. He makes them do push-ups and Hindu squats, and takes you on 4 or 5 mile jogs to warm up in the summer heat of Florida. But he brought me through the whole program, got me in the ring within 3 months, which was really unusual. We really hit it off. He did everything with you that he asked you to do. Great guy. And he was involved in the booking a little bit then as well.
Okay.
At the time, and he got me started. He even managed me for some of my matches early on. And Matsuda hadn't been on TV in quite a while, but he was a very well-known wrestler. And so he was really the instrumental guy on training me and then getting me in the ring. He did some videos with me down there that they did on how he trained me, some of the Japanese style training, and the fans really liked it. So he was a big part of my success early on, looking back. Very, very grateful to hear Matsuda. He didn't have a school, didn't charge anything. He just had the intrinsic enjoyment of, he thought that pro wrestling, came over from Japan, had a judo background, did very well with it, did well for his family financially as a wrestler, and he really was a wonderful guy.
Did he tell you what happened with him and Hulk Hogan, why he broke Hogan's leg?
No, he never brought that up. He was very stoic. But everybody else told me different versions of the story, that he was goofing off and not selling in the ring properly. And so Matsuda was known for his, what they call shooting abilities, and hooks, as they call bone-to-bone type stuff, where you can actually know how to break people's bones. I guess it goes in with the like Danny Hodge guys and stuff, going way back in wrestling. And Matsuda was trained how to do that kind of stuff, so he, I guess, got in the ring and wanted to show Hogan how to really sell and not goof off by breaking his shin or his leg or something. But I heard by the time I got to training with Matsuda, he had mellowed out quite a bit at that stage, fortunately for me. And I was not I always loved training, so I was not a goof off kind of guy. I think Matsuda considered me a good pupil. I was very hungry to learn, and I never goofed off. So fortunately, I never experienced that side of him. Wrath of Hero. He's famous for that, but I never encountered it, fortunately.
Were you still doing your regular gym workouts on top of all those squats and push-ups that he would have?
No, when I went trained with him for those 3 months, it was all training with him every afternoon. and he'd turn the air conditioning off in the garment factory. So it'd be like 120 degrees in there in the summers in Florida. It was,
wow.
There'd be pools of sweat around us. It was unbelievable.
So he owned a garment factory, he was
Small
on the
garment
booking
factory.
committee, and he wrestled and he managed and he
He
trained.
retired from wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah, he retired a number of years ago before that.
Was
He
Kevin...
did not manage. He came out of like retirement to manage me.
Okay.
Yeah, which was huge.
What was your experience like when you first got in the ring? Did you enjoy it right away?
Oh, I loved it. I remember, never forget my first match at Daytona Beach Ocean Front Center with Coco Samoa. And still got a scar on my nose for a different match with him from his fingernail. And great guy. And they intentionally paired me with very experienced wrestlers, which I didn't realize. I didn't know enough about wrestling, how huge that was, who could walk and talk me through a match. And I was so inexperienced. And they, especially the first few months, bring Matsuda down ringside to help me as well. So I had my trainer and coach ringside the first few months, and then they put me with very, very experienced guys, which was very, very helpful early on.
And you wrestled Ric Flair fairly early on too.
Yeah, that was crazy. Ric Flair, my first match against him was where I debuted. Like 6 months after I debuted was at Daytona Beach Oceanfront Center, which is still there. People still wrestle there, down there. And I'll never forget Ric Flair coming in with the custom suit and the designer shades and the limo and on the Rolex and diamond rings, and I was like, oh man, I want to be like him. And we had an hour Broadway. I don't know how he got me through that match at that my level of experience, but he carried me through a 1 hour Broadway. I didn't know what he called a sunset flip. I didn't even know what a sunset flip was at that point.
Was he the heel in that match, or were you?
You know, I was a heel at the time, and he was a heel, but the crowd, Rick turned the crowd against him, and so the crowd there, I would say, was definitely for me.
Heel versus heel, 6 months into the business, going an hour. That's
crazy.
That is insane. But you
God bless Nate.
Yeah.
Man, take a guy with that inexperienced as I was and get me through an hour of Broadway. I don't know how he did that. He's unbelievable.
Did you hit it off with him right away, but behind the scenes?
Oh yeah, I was Mr. Flair, sir, and I was like a sponge. And he gave me some advice afterwards. I didn't realize he'd gone back and put in a really ran and raved about me back in Charlotte at the time where the Crockett's were in NWA wrestling, which led to me eventually, less than 6 months later, making my debut there. But that was all Rick going back and talking to Dusty and the Crockett family and saying, you got to take a look at this guy. So.
And before you left, I got to ask you about this. I know you've answered this question a million times, but there's the infamous match you had with Brody. Yeah. It's funny because I bet you probably didn't think about it for years, and now with the internet, that match is one of the matches that smart marks always talk about.
Oh, I get asked about it all the time, and it was another learning experience. We had done TV earlier that day on a Wednesday. We do TVs all morning, in the afternoon drive across to either Lauderdale or Miami and do a show Wednesday nights every week. And it was a long day. And they had me in my first cage match, I think, ever. I had no idea. Here I am with Bruiser Brody in a cage match. And I was young.
Had you met him before? Any experience?
I had a match with him, a non-cage match with him before. And
okay.
The matches went fine. From my perspective, he might, maybe not from his perspective, but, and he was a big, intimidating looking guy. He's a big, scary looking guy. And everybody told me about his reputation, but we worked fine together for the couple matches prior to that, which is why it's such a mystery. We got in cage match. I didn't know what I was doing, and he just stopped working. Stood there and he made these noises, but didn't work. And if you hit him or punched him or did anything, he just kind of registered but not sell really. And I fortunately had a very experienced referee, called him Fonzie, in the ring, and Fonzie looked at me and I looked at him, and I didn't know what was going on with him. I got scared because I'm thinking this guy's not selling, and I heard all these stories about him, and he's got tape on his fingers, and I think maybe those are razor blades they put under those things, and we're in a cage match, and I don't know what I'm doing, and he's not working, he's just staring at me, and so we kind of locked up a little bit and pushed around a little bit. But Fonzie, I go, Fonzie, what do we do? I got in the corner and hit him a couple times. He didn't register. He stood there. And I go, Fonzie, what do we do? And Fonzie said, I don't know, brother. Fonzie goes, Fonzie saved me. Fonzie just backed him in the corner again and hit him a few times, and I'll grab your arm and just kind of throw me aside. Don't listen to me, and I'll DQ it. So that was our only thing that Fonzie thought of to get out of the match, because he just stopped working. And unfortunately, we don't have him to ask why he did that. But I did, because of my training with Matsuda, I wanted to be respectful. But when the bell rang, then they couldn't get the cage door open. Now I was stuck in there with this guy, who I think maybe now we've really ticked him off. Man, I jumped over the ropes and through the cage like a scared jackrabbit, and went to the locker room and sat there and go, man, Matsuda would want me to go over and say something or apologize. I don't know what I did, because I didn't, but I better go over there. So I got over my fright and walked over. We were separate locker rooms there, because there was a stage behind the cage. You couldn't talk to each other before or after the matches, but the crowd had let out of the building. I waited and walked over there and knocked on the door timidly, and his manager he had at the time down in Florida, Engelbert Humperdinck, I think they called him. We just called him Humperdinck. And I saw him and knocked on the door, and he like just kind of waved me in. I said, I just said, excuse me, sir, I don't know what I did wrong in there, and I'm sorry. And he was taking his stuff off. Brody just said, man, don't worry about it. He just totally blew it off. He said, it's been a long day. He goes, I'm a baby face on TV right now down in with Define Erics. He goes, you're on TV already as a heel to go down in NWA, because I'd done a couple TVs already, and I was already getting ready to leave Florida. He goes, they got you on there as a heel? He goes, just wasn't working in there. Don't worry about it. So you say I was greatly relieved. I go, I can go over there and if I'm going to get a butt whooping, I'm going to get a butt whooping.
Yeah.
But I went over there anticipating maybe the worst. And what did I do? But he was very, professional and was very nonchalant. He said, man, it's just been a long day today. And that was it.
So the wrestlers, I know wrestlers gossip and they exaggerate everything. So the people that say you left in your gear and you drove, that's wrestlers making up gossip.
Oh no, I walked over and talked to them and showered there, and yeah. No, I actually intentionally went over to the locker room. I'll admit I was nervous, but I knew Matsuda would be upset if I didn't go over there and try to talk to him. So. And
you also play professional football. You've dealt with some very serious characters in your life.
Yeah, I've been around a lot of big, intimidating guys, so I wasn't like a shooter guy or anything, but I'm like, man, I better go over there and at least apologize. I was going over to apologize. I was not going there like what happened and they're like angry. I went over there as humble as I could be, and wanted to apologize to him for whatever happened that caused what I didn't even understand happened in there at the time. But I was in the ring stuff. I was scared. I didn't know what was going on. It was scary.
Did the office ever tell you any explanation? Obviously, that wasn't the finish of the match. What was the finish of the match? Do you remember?
It was going to be some kind of DQ, I think.
So
I don't even remember.
Yeah. They didn't explain to you anything the next day. Sorry about that, or
the office? Oh no. They I think they talked to Bruiser, and Bruiser told him what he told me, and so the office didn't make a big deal out of it at all.
And I guess he would have been killed shortly after that. Do you remember hearing about it?
I remember hearing about it. I don't remember the timeline. It was sad.
July '88 is when he died.
Yeah.
So
We were all sad about that for sure. That was a horrible thing.
So you started off with the Crockett's shortly after that. What was it like going from Florida, which was popular but not as nearly as popular as the NWA at the time?
Man, I tell you, it was like the 4th of July fireworks career-wise, going off to be in with the NWA and be with the Four Horsemen, and oh my gosh, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and J.J. Dillon. I didn't even grasp the opportunity, but it was incredible and huge crowds. It was what a great way to get into your second year of wrestling. Wow, it was fabulous.
Did you become immediate friends with Sting? We all know that you guys were best buddies for a long time. How did that friendship start?
We weren't. He was working with the company that we merged with, the Watts Territories. It was
UWF or something.
UWF. And they still were running some separate shows. We did some joint shows together. And I seen Sting in some of the magazines and stuff, but when he came in, he immediately got put with Flair, got a big push, and I was kind of jealous. And we'd see each other at the hotels. We started traveling the same shows together, but we didn't hang out. And we'd actually had a couple matches together, but I'd see him in the breakfast room, because he'd get up to, a lot of guys would sleep in, but we'd get up and eat breakfast and want to go to the gym. And so we'd see each other sitting across the restaurant, and he had tried to approach me one time, but I was so cocky back then with the Horsemen. He asked me how I kept in shape on the road and stayed looking so good. He was being gracious and trying to break the ice. I was sarcastic and was taking my wrestling boots off and never looked up and said, Stolies mean vodka and peanut M&Ms. I gave him a smart answer. He walked off. He probably wanted to knock my head off, but he walked away shaking his head like, really? But thankfully, he gave me a second chance, and when I saw him in the restaurant, we ended up, so this is ridiculous. We started eating breakfast together, and then we saw each other at the same gym. We started going to the gym together. So we had breakfast to go to the gym, and just evolved into a lifelong, to this very moment that I sit with you here, incredible friendship. So thank God he gave me a second chance from our initial meetings.
Speaking of that, in those days, what was your pre-workout breakfast?
Well, back then we would do oatmeal, and a huge bowl of oatmeal, and a dozen egg whites a piece would be our kind of our pre-workout carb protein meal. Then we go to the digest a little bit and go to the gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was a good workout partner, obviously.
Oh, Sting was instrumental in me make the transformation from football player. He had been trained with pro bodybuilders out in California, was in the gym business out there, Gold's Gyms, the old school franchise.
Yeah.
So he knew all kinds of stuff about training and more bodybuilding stuff. I knew a lot about football training and powerlifting, so he helped me incorporate a lot of the bodybuilding principles nutritionally, and because I was like a McDonald's and junk food, I had no discipline in my nutrition, so Stinger taught me so much about how to eat properly and train properly and do some more bodybuilding exercises along with my strength type training. So I did more of a power building routine early in my career. So, and Sting was instrumental in that. He really mentored me on that. So we had a great friendship. He really mentored me a lot in my training. He taught me a lot about what I knew about training and nutrition early on in my wrestling career.
And what was your reaction when you were brought into the Four Horsemen? Were you happy about that?
Oh, I was thrilled. Are you kidding me? That was the ultimate heel, pretty much maybe in wrestling, the ultimate heel group at the time. So what an opportunity. And they were great of working with me, from JJ to Tully and Arn. Tully used to go to a barn near outside of Charlotte and take me in the ring and help train me. And so, because they knew as part of the group, they didn't want me to be the weak link, necessarily, so to speak. I was so inexperienced, so they really mentored and trained with me, and so it was look back, what an opportunity. It was great.
Did you ever party with Ric Flair? I'm guessing you must have gone out
Oh
with
yeah,
him.
definitely. Rick is one of a kind. So he was 24/7. He sometimes hang out with Rick, you almost felt like you didn't sleep at all or more than a couple hours, because we'd train in the afternoons, wrestle at night, and a lot of times have to travel, fly in the morning, and go. So if you went out and got out of the building at midnight after you get showered and got out, and went out at all, it was already 3, 4 in the morning. And we'd go out, party a little bit, and grab a meal or something. My gosh, sometimes I feel like I didn't sleep for days at a time with Nate. He was a blast to hang out with.
What was the craziest thing you ever saw him do? Obviously, he's known for streaking, I guess you could say.
Yeah, he did a little bit of that, and just buying trays full of shots. And when we go out, and Rick always did everything all the way, riding in limousines and just you name it. Definitely.
Now, he's claimed he's been with 10,000 women. What do you think about that? Is that possible? Or obviously there's been a hell of a lot, but
I don't know. I think him and Will Chamberlain both make the same claim. Let's just say Rick definitely made a good effort. I don't know if he reached that number or not, but he definitely made the effort, I think, for sure.
At what point?
Part of it is reputation as well.
Yeah.
But and that was part of his reputation, his persona as a wrestler. Not just, Jeff Lynne limousine riding, and Jeff Lynne riding, wheeling, dealing, So.
Were you in the limousine too when you were part of the Horsemen?
Oh yeah, we all traveled together.
Okay.
Yeah, with the private jets and the limousines, and yeah, it was quite the entry for a second-year guy in the wrestling, for sure. A lot of fun.
Have you seen Rick and Tully's daughters in the ring yet? They're both doing pretty well these days.
I've seen Rick's daughter; she's amazing, and I haven't seen a lot of what Tully's daughter do, but her she's really good. Yeah. So it's in the genes, for sure.
And at what point did you start becoming friends backstage with Nikita Koloff?
We weren't. I wrestled in the ring with Nikita some, but we didn't hang. Nikita wasn't. He used to go back to the hotel and eat cans of tuna fish and stuff, I heard, at the time. And he wasn't a go out after the matches kind of guy. So we were cordial with each other, but we made a couple road trips together, out of Charlotte a couple times. But Nikita and I didn't have any real friendship, so to speak, back in our early wrestling days. Then he retired. So.
Right. Is it true that he was kayfabing the boys at certain times regarding the Russian gimmick?
I heard that, but he got in a little bit earlier than me. When I traveled with him, I was around him, he spoke English, and I never encountered that with him.
Okay.
I heard he took it all away, but for a number of years when we first got in, but by the time I met him it was around more in the late 80s, I think that he had lightened up a little bit on that.
And I heard you on Road Warrior Animals podcast recently, and it sounds like you guys were pretty good friends.
Oh yeah, we would. Road Warriors like to go to the gym too. So when you land in the city, the guys who were really into working out, and obviously working out was a big part of what they did, and so they looked so incredible. So we'd all hit the ground running. We'd fly in the morning, and we'd all hit, like we said, grab a meal and digest and hit the gym together. And we'd all, where we going? We got to know which gyms and what town. So yeah, then we'd all maybe go out to eat afterwards or before we went back to the hotel and showered.
Yeah.
So it'd be like workout, eat, shower, go to the building. So
yeah,
we were in very similar circles. So yeah, got to be hung out quite a bit with the Road Warriors.
Now, obviously, you train extremely hard and dieted extremely hard, but you've been open that you took PEDs throughout your career. Did that start in your football years, or did that really take place in the wrestling years?
The steroids at the time early in my career, I took them a little bit in the off season of football, not in season. And then in my wrestling career, I actually would go on a 8 or 12 week cycle, then go off for 8 or 12 weeks. I was contrary to popular opinion, I had a good foundation of football and powerlifting and working out, and I always had kind of a from high school on, I was kind of known, my calling card was my physique, so a lot of that was genetics. So I would, back in that day, it was so common back then that when I started taking the PEDs, they weren't even a classified substance really at the time.
Didn't start till 1990 or so.
Yeah, so we looked at it as a strength athlete, as like a training supplement. But my agent, getting back to Tom Haney, and my background with Don Reinhardt, a world-class powerlifter, they always mentored me to do, if you're going to do it, get your blood work done, make sure you cycle on, cycle off. So I was a user of PEDs, and looking back now, because of did you abuse steroids? Well, if you take any illicit drug, I look at it, there's a potential abuse. But if there was a way back then to monitor it, I did do that. So that's kind of was my experience. Towards the end of my career, I switched over to basic, what you would term now, the last 4 or 5 years of my wrestling, which was, many people thought where I really got leaner and maybe had my best look. I was on what you would call an anti-aging type supplementation, PED, which a lot of the baseball players started doing, and football players. Back then, in the late 90s, a little bit of growth hormone, like basically anti-aging amount, even though I wasn't that old then. You take a little bit of growth hormone, a little bit of testosterone, that was it. Take a shot of testosterone once a week and a few cc's of growth, and that's all I was on the last number of years of my career. And I actually thought that was probably maybe a healthier way to go about it.
Right.
As doctors and endocrinologists and everybody that I was under thought that was, at my age, in my 40 or 40ish, was a better route to go. But I never took really high dosages of the PEDs, and I always would make a real concerted effort, due to my mentoring I had with doctors and with coaching, to make sure I cleared on and off for my own health. And fortunately, as you know now, I give God a lot of credit. My body now, I've had a neurological injury that I stand, but my health is phenomenal.
Yeah.
No medications, no blood pressure issues. No, I'm so thankful the way God designs our bodies. There was no lasting after effects of my use of PEDs back in the day. I think part of that was I did cycle on and off.
Right.
Not that there's a safe way to do that kind of thing, but I think that definitely played a role in me being healthy now as well.
Now, I know you don't want to promote this, but you kind of mentioned that the last cycle you did with the shot of testosterone and the growth hormone was effective for you, but I had a few bodybuilding people ask me if you could say what your most effective stack was of the steroids when you were into those.
That would be outdated now.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I definitely don't endorse it or promote it now, because now I firmly believe with the modern day training methods and nutrition, the advancements that have been made, that and the natural supplementation out there that most guys can reach, I think they're a full genetic potential, clean, and look phenomenal and be able to compete in any sport. And there's a lot more drug testing now, and I think that's great. And so, it would be outdated anyways, but I was a testosterone DECA guy. I thought that was a safer combo. And I tried a little Winstrol V for a couple cycles, but I didn't like the water-based. And you had to take a lot of shots, so throughout my early career, I was mainly just some testosterone and Decadurabolin at the time.
And what was your reaction in wrestling when you got your first world title run?
Well, it was a big responsibility, because Ric Flair had left for WWE, and he took the belt with him. And it was a huge void in the company. I mean, nobody can step in and take the place of Ric Flair. So overnight, I stepped in as a world champion against Barry Windham, which was great for Barry to come in a cage match. They gave me all the bells and whistles. Harley Race, one of the all-time great legends, my manager. And we actually had the match, and we couldn't even hold the belt up because we didn't have a belt made yet. But the company did the best they could. They were scrambling. They said, let's switch you heel with Harley and make a run with the belt. So, because originally I was supposed to wrestle Rick in the cage and win that match. And I had asked me all the time, was there hard feelings you and Rick? Now, are you kidding me? All that Rick did for me? If Rick had a decision he was making as a businessman to go to another company, there was no hard feelings from my part or against Rick at all. But it was definitely a big challenge at the time that I did my very best with. But it was still a great opportunity. Who wouldn't want to be world champion? A lot of great wrestlers had their whole career never got to be world champion. So it was a great opportunity at the same time. But at the time I felt a lot of pressure because I felt that nobody could fill Ric Flair's shoes, and here I was as like a transition champion with when Rick had been the man all that time. So I felt a lot of pressure not to be Ric Flair, but to fill that void at the time. But I was honored, and I felt like it was a great opportunity at the time for sure. Something I'll always cherish, of course.
Was Harley Race traveling with you on the road too? Harley
Race traveled everywhere with me and was very great mentor, and that was very helpful as well. That helped I was putting a lot of pressure on myself, and then putting Harley with me relieved a lot of that pressure.
Would you be the one driving, or would he be the one driving?
When Harley was traveling, Harley would drive. Cigarette in one hand, people have heard this before, a beer in the other. 100 miles an hour, literally. Pretty scary the first couple of times, but when you get used to Harley wanted to drive. He was a road warrior, old school, rubber on the asphalt kind of guy. When he drove, he wanted to get where he was going. He wanted to be behind the wheel, and I wasn't going to question it was Mr. Harley Race, sir, So.
Did you ever see him in action in one of his altercations? Because I understand, I know this is towards the end of his career, but sometimes he'd get into it at the clubs.
I saw him do some of his hand stuff with guys, where he'd hand wrestle with guys and twist their arm over. He did some unbelievable stuff with his hand strength, but Harley was also at that stage of his career. I heard Harley when he was young days. My gosh, he was like came out of would wrestle people out of the crowd when he was 15 years old. What an unbelievable man and a career. So, but he wasn't. He was definitely more laid back at that stage when I was around him, for sure.
And I understand at one point they were going to release him or something, and you stood up for him.
Well, yeah, it wasn't just him. I was standing up for Harley because I had so much respect for Harley. But also I wanted Harley to be my manager. I was like, man, Harley Race is my manager, And I felt they had made a commitment with what happened, and the challenge of where we go from here, with the huge void of Rick not being there, of Nate being gone, for them to, I felt like they were pulling the rug out from underneath us a little bit by not utilizing Harley as my manager, and so I definitely wanted to go in there and voice my concerns, and that I really wanted to stay with Harley and keep it going, for sure. But I had massive respect for Harley and still do, so that was like a no-brainer to go in there, and wasn't like I was doing anything great. It was for me too, and they kind of promised that at the time, so I felt I definitely needed to let them know how I felt about it, for sure.
What did you think about Jim Herd, who I guess that was the guy that Rick had his problems with, and he was probably the one you had to speak to about Harley?
Jim Herd was, I never had an issue with Jim in his office. He wasn't, my main contact was usually at the office, and we always had cordial, business-like type meeting. So I never had any big issues or problems personally with Jim Herd. I heard a lot of stories, especially after I left and had gone to WWE, but I never had any real big issues with Jim Herd.
And during your last few months as champion, during that run, you didn't wrestle that much. I understand this could be wrong again according to the internet, because they already used all of your dates and they didn't want to use you much more than that because it would be going over your contract. Was that the reason? Or
I had gone over.
Okay.
Back then I had, sounds crazy, 275 wrestling matches a year. And usually every year by November, I was over. Shows you how much we wrestled back then. So they would ask me if I would wrestle more events, and I usually would, but with the scenario of me leaving and risking injury, and I only had a few months left, we'd agreed upon a departure date contractually. I felt if you want me to wrestle and go over to Japan, defend the title, and risk injury, I did not have a deal yet with anybody else on paper. So I felt like I should definitely be compensated. And they were very fair about that. They paid me well to go to Japan. I don't know whether New Japan paid what they paid me to come over, but they took very good care of me on the way out. My match was Sting in Milwaukee to put the title back on Sting. They paid me extra from what my guarantee was per year, because I was out of matches.
So what made you want to leave being the top guy? You just had enough of the company at that point? Or?
Well, I wasn't the top guy. I was one of the top guys. I didn't think I was the guy. Might have been world champion at the time, but we had the Road Warriors and Sting and so many great wrestlers there at the time, Steiner Brothers and you name it. I go on and on. We had a lot of talent there. But I had always had my eye. I look back now in life, we always think the grass is greener on the other side, I had a farmer one time tell me, yep, Lex, grass always looks greener on the other side. I go, he goes, that's a farm thing. What do you mean? He goes, a lot of livestock, especially the goats, the grass is green where they're at, but they eat the grass underneath the fence. He goes, they'll cut their heads trying to eat the grass on the other side of the fence. I always thought that was kind of a funny analogy, how we can always think things are better elsewhere. I wasn't that unhappy. Obviously, where I was at, I had a great career going there, but I always thought at the time that maybe WWE was the number one. We were number two with audience and ratings, and I always thought, man, it'd be great to see what I could do there at WWE. So, had met and talked with Vince McMahon just by chance in a gym in Las Vegas one time when we were both in town, and he was real cordial. Said I'd love to do business with you sometime. So. I definitely was looking to, see what I could do in WWE for sure. That was the main purpose behind it.
So I understand that you initially signed with WBF because there was some type of no-compete clause after your contract. Non-enforceable, really, legally, but I did sign a one-year non-compete. Okay. Which
is why I signed the bodybuilding contract and not a wrestling contract with Vince McMahon.
So you were one of the hosts of the Body Stars television show, and I guess you were supposed to guest pose. Were you ever actually going to compete as a competitor, or was it all just going to be...
That was strictly a one-year segue into the wrestling, and I was going to be a guest poser. I got injured with a motorcycle wreck, a very serious one, right before the guest posing. But
what happened with that, if you want to get into that? Because I've always been curious about that motorcycle wreck.
It was a bad one, head on with a car, twilight, on like a 1.5 lane road. I was riding it like it was mine. The car came around a blind curve and head on. I almost got out of the way, but knocked me probably 150 feet into the woods, missed every tree. But I was a mess. Ended up having a miracle of God. I look back now. I didn't hit a tree, it would have snapped me in two. We'd probably go going around 40, 45 mile an hour. So,
where did that take place?
Atlanta.
Okay.
And so they initially were going to amputate my right arm. And Sting saved me on that. Sting was there in the middle of the night. He'd come back from a show. I was off that night. Don't ask me how I got off, but I was off. That was where I was riding my bike. And he was at a show, and he came back, and then he came right to the hospital. And he got Dr. Andrews out of Birmingham. He's a world-renowned sports orthopedic. And the people in Atlanta wanted to amputate my right arm. It was really bad. Multiple fractures through the skin. I had a lot of injuries, but that was the worst of it. And Sting heard them talking about amputating the arm, having emergency surgery. He called Dr. Andrews. Andrews, don't let him do that. Tell him to clean him up and send him to Birmingham the next day, which we did. And Dr. Andrews somehow put that arm back together, and I was in the ring like 7 months later.
Wow.
Unbelievable recovery. I mean, made my debut as the Narcissist like 7 months later.
Did it have the same strength as before, or was there?
Well, I had to build back up, but the good thing about bone breaks are I still have steel rods in there. That thing with the steel rod in my forearm was the real deal. I had a titanium plate about 7 inches long, which I still have in my right arm, to hold the bones together. And once the bones heal, that's pretty solid. You worry about it a little bit, but doctors assured me, with that titanium plate in there, the bones are healed. You can start working out and get in the ring again. And the neurological stuff, they thought maybe I might have some neurological damage because the damage still sphered down in my elbow and my hand, but there was none. My right hand and forearm and arm was stronger than my left arm. So
wow.
It was I'll look back now, I give God the credit, but it was a miraculous recovery for sure.
What did the WWE initially say to you right after that accident? Did they always say it's going to be here for you when you're back, or were you afraid that for a bit that you were going to be possibly released?
Oh no, they took great care of me, and they paid me all the way through my 1 year as a bodybuilder, and they paid me all the way through my 1 year as a bodybuilder, and then I jumped right into my debut for them as a Narcissist with Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Why do you think the WBF didn't work?
I don't know. I mean, I think at the time, Weider out in California had a monopoly on supplements and magazines and things like that. To do a magazine, your own supplement company, we got to give Vince credit. He's bold with football leagues or you name it. He is not afraid. He is a born entrepreneur, and he wanted to do the bodybuilding thing. Him and I used to work out together. He loved working out, still does. Obviously, he's in incredible shape for a guy his age.
Yeah,
amazing. So he always loved the workout lifestyle. So it was a natural thing for him to try as an entrepreneur and get a supplement line going. So I give him credit, but I don't think that's an easy business. And there was a real monopoly on the time from a couple companies that he was up against. And he's an incredible entrepreneur, but he wasn't real experienced in that field, that endeavor. So I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be the one to judge why it wasn't successful, just timing wise, or I'm not sure.
What was Vince like to work out with?
Oh, he's there. He's right there, man. Great guy, great training partner.
Wow.
For sure, yeah. He loves the gym, and he's all out. Everything he does.
So when did they approach you with the Narcissist gimmick? Was that something that they'd already talked about doing before the accident, or was this something they came up with?
I'm not sure the timeline. I think after the bodybuilding show they had, we started talking about, as I was recovering from the injury, from a motorcycle wreck, about what we wanted to do. And I'm not sure, it wasn't my idea, but somebody in creative came up with it, and they really decided that would be something really, really good with the mirrors and with my physique, and so that sounds good to me. So we went with it. Definitely was my idea.
And your first feud was with Kurt Hennig?
My first WrestleMania match was with Kurt, yeah.
Yeah.
My WrestleMania debut, which was shortly after my debut. So what a guy to have a debut match with. It's funny, the match, Kurt, I talked about the match where I was all relaxed thinking WrestleMania debut with Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, one of the best wrestlers in the business. I got a night off. And so we went over the match a little bit, but I didn't think, I was a little careless, didn't think much about what we talked about. We got in the ring and I didn't know, I knew Kurt had a reputation of being a ribber, like pull pranks. But we got in the ring, we locked up, he goes, what are we doing, what are we doing? I thought he was joking around. But he apologized afterwards, but Kurt told me, I don't know whether he was still ribbing me or not, but he said he completely blanked out. So we ended up having like an okay match, but I was trying to remember what we talked about in the back, and I was calling the match. But normally the heel calls the match, he was the heel. So it was kind of like, well, Luger couldn't even have a great WrestleMania debut as a worker, you know. I was never the best worker anyways, but it was more my look. And more aesthetics and not as much substance to what I was. And so it was like, wow, Luger didn't have a very good match for his WrestleMania debut. But behind the scenes, I was like, oh my gosh, I was in like a state of panic in the ring. I go, what do you mean? What do we do? And I look back now, it was a funny moment. Yeah. I didn't think it was funny at the time. I was a nervous wreck, but I had to call the match.
I see.
And I hadn't really memorized a lot of stuff and what we were doing in there.
And Bruce Pritchard told the story that I guess when Kurt would wrestle you on house shows, he would rip some of your tassels off.
Oh yeah, well that was Kurt. That was him. He'd rip my tassels off, or do a sunset flip, and not go. And he did pull my trunks down in Madison Square Garden. He was always doing stuff. Yeah. But that was just Kurt. I had never a problem with that stuff at all.
Yeah. Julie,
the costume girl, just put the tassels back on. That wasn't like a. Kurt and I got along fine, so that was Kurt. We'd all laugh. We'd laugh about it after the match.
Was it special to you to wrestle in Madison Square Garden?
Oh, man, that's hallowed ground. First time I was in the Garden, see Muhammad Ali and Frank Sinatra, all the stars that have performed there on the walls in the back, and be back in the locker rooms as they were. It's a special place. It really is, for sure.
What were the biggest differences backstage you noticed between WWE and WCW?
I didn't really notice. We had the agents; they give you your matches and a finish, and the boys are the boys. So I didn't notice any big difference at all in that regard.
How did you get along with Pat Patterson?
Oh, we got along great. Pat and I and his husband. And we used to go golfing together. When we were in the same town, we'd bring our golf clubs and go golf. We both loved golf. So I got along great with Pat, no doubt about it. He was a real prankster too. So he scared me the first time I met him because Vince was standing there and he goes, I went to a TV, my first TV, and Pat was joking around with Vince and I. He goes, oh, by the way, Lex, I don't know if you heard, Pat Patterson, I can't talk like him. He goes, we're all sold out hotels tonight. He goes, but I got an extra bed in my room for you. I was like a deer in headlights. I didn't know he was joking with me. So I go, what do you mean I'm going to room with you? Because I'd heard about Pat, he was married to a guy. So I was like, I wasn't a homophobic or anything, but I was like, what do you mean I'd heard some stories about WWE at the time with, in that regard. So Vince didn't think it was all that funny, but he started laughing. So, but that was the first time I ever met Pat. I didn't know what a ribbery was, so I was like, oh my gosh. What do you mean I'm going to room with you, Like I thought, am I the new guy,
So when you heard that they were going to switch the gimmick and make you a baby face, were you happy about that, or were you kind of comfortable in the narcissist gimmick at that point?
I loved the narcissist and being a heel, and it was fun, but one thing Matsuda always taught me was, it's a work, and if it was a shoot, there wouldn't be that many guys in wrestling. Don't ever question finishes. Don't ever question when the bookers want you to do something or switch or do something. You do it to the very best of your ability. And if you're injured, if you can walk to the ring, you're going to wrestle. So he kind of drilled those things. Never question the finish, never question character changes. and do it. So he taught me to be a good foot soldier. I'll never forget those things Matsuo told me about. So when Vince called me and told me that they wanted to do I didn't know whether it'd be a long-term gimmick at all at the time, to be honest with you. I thought it was something for SummerSlam.
Okay.
To do. That's the way it was explained to me. I was going to do a bus tour and challenge Yokozuna for the world title. So I didn't know how they were going to do the switch because I was a heel looking in mirrors. But Vince explained what he wanted to do in the aircraft carrier, and I didn't know if I could slam Yoko. We did a walkthrough the week before, but he goes, "Don't worry, it'll work," and it definitely worked. I went from looking in mirrors to, on July 4th, being a babyface.
Wow.
The crowd had a great response live there on the USS Intrepid. It was a great setup. So and there it was.
How did you like working with Yokozuna?
Oh, Yoko. I call him Yoko. Yokozuna was a dream to work with. I think one of the best big men ever. He was. We all call him the Dancing Bear. We called him that because he was 600 plus pounds, but he could bend backwards before he took a bump with his back. When he let his hair down, he had that long hair he let out, and he'd bend. His flexibility, his agility, his ability to move in the ring, and just those Island boys are incredible workers, usually naturally, anyways.
Yeah. So
he was a dream to work with. And Yoko and I also struck a very good friendship outside of the ring. We both loved playing cards.
Okay.
We killed time on the road, the locker room, when we were in Europe on the bus. So Yoko and I got together personally really well. So yeah, very fond memories of Yoko.
Were you disappointed at all? I've heard you say in other interviews you weren't, but I know as a fan, I was a fan of yours at that time, and when they had the balloon drop and the confetti or whatever, when you won by count out, did you find that was a little lame considering the big build up to that match?
Another question I'm asked a lot. I would have loved to have won, but I wasn't disappointed because I was never promised. I thought it was a great opportunity to do the Let's Express tour. It went really, really well. And to be in the main event against Yoko for the world title. And Vince had already pretty much mentioned if I was going to win the title, he'd rather maybe wait off until the following WrestleMania. So, I definitely wasn't disappointed. And I knew that they were going to take Yoko off on a angle with Undertaker. And then if I was going to get another world title shot, they would try to zero back in on WrestleMania the following year, which was preceded with Brett and I tying in a Royal Rumble, which I thought went great. We both hit the mat at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's the only tie ever in a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that I know.
We were co-winners. Yeah. And
was that scary going into that, thinking that you might screw that up?
We didn't know. That was, wow, what you thought? Brett's so good. Brett hung on to me and just timed it, because I was just going backwards over the top rope, so that was all Brett. And we back then, even the cam work was in, but they were scared it was going to look really bad. That's what I call it. But we both hit the mat. You could run that over slow motion 100 times and not be able to really tell who touched first. It turned out great. And that was a good setup for WrestleMania, for sure.
And I understand you were pretty good friends with Brett outside of the ring.
Man, we still are. I just saw Brett a while back. We had up in Kingston, Ontario. We were together, and it's great to see him again. And great friendship to this day. We always loved working in the ring together. Nothing but respect for Brett.
Are you still a big coffee connoisseur? I understand Brett and you had that in common.
I'm a big coffee guy to this day. Brett introduced me to Starbucks coffee. Go to Starbucks almost every day with my mom. But we gotta go to Tim Hortons also here in Buffalo. But Brett really introduced me to the joy of coffee and the caffeine and the whole deal. So we traveled together some, and Brett's the reason I'm a coffee lover today. We shared that as well.
Now, for the Lex Express itself, what were your thoughts on that concept and how it played out?
Oh, Lex Express was very well laid out. We traveled the whole country. They really did systematically. There were great crowds everywhere we went. I mean, we were in Denver one time. I remember they were lined 3 times around a Toys R Us.
Wow.
In like 100-degree heat day. They promoted it well. We had a tour director on the bus. It was very well done. It was a long summer, because I'd like start doing morning radio shows at 6 a.m., calling in person from city to city every day, then do like 2 appearances, like 3-hour autograph sessions, try to get to the gym, and then I'd go on the evening newscast with the weather guy, and it was morning till night. It was exhausting, but it was good. It was very well done.
Now, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but I guess Bruce Pritchard did a podcast on you where I guess he was working with you a bit during that Lex Express time, and he said you started to make requests where you would want to fly into a city, then get on the bus and end up staying at the Marriott at night and just go on the bus when you had to make the appearances. Is there any truth that you were asking for those? Or is that him telling a different version of what happened?
I'd have to hear what he said.
Okay.
I wanted to stay at a decent hotel because of my training. And I didn't want to stay at a hotel that didn't have room service. So I did like Marriott, so I might have put in a Marriott request or a hotel that had room service and or food.
Right.
I wasn't trying to get a Ritz-Carlton or anything, but if I was going to be on the road that much, for my training, I wanted to be a decent hotel. So I mean, maybe he's in the office and he knew things that I might have asked for. I don't know. So I don't know if there's, I'm not saying that's a falsehood, but I was on the bus most of the whole tour to see my family a couple times. They flew me home for like a day. But I was on the road. I rarely flew. I was pretty much on the bus the whole time. I did fly once in a while if they wanted to give me a day with my family or something, because I had 2 small children, and which was great that they would do that. Then I'd meet them if they had and they'd time it. If they had a really long ride, like from South Dakota, they wanted to get to California, they'd fly me home, then fly me to California, like the next day.
Okay.
Or something like that. But I never requested that. It was something that they wanted to do for me so I could still see my family a little bit. Because they knew that it was a lot. I told you my daily schedule, so we're going to give you a day or 2 home with your family. So we're going to fly you from where you're at in Denver home to Atlanta, then we're going to fly you to LA and get back on the bus. But I wouldn't just sit at a hotel and go hop on a bus to go to the appearances and fly everywhere. I was definitely on the bus and go from appearance to appearance all day long in the bus. Spent a lot of time on the bus.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He also mentioned there was a video crew with you on the bus the whole time. Is that accurate?
Not the whole time. There was, between certain dates, if they wanted to get some footage. They want to get some footage of me, more just sitting in the bus, more than sound bites, really.
Okay.
More they wanted to get footage.
Yeah, because after I heard that, I was wondering, like, maybe in a few years, there's suddenly going to be a video that comes out of everything you did on the bus at that time. But also that would have become a bit annoying to have a crew around you in those close quarters.
Yeah, no, we didn't have a full-time crew. I guess they've released some footage of me that they have of the Lex Express that they've released. But the one guy, I was on social media. Only thing I do is Twitter. And guy goes, man, I watched all that footage. You look, I got the feeling you were miserable. I go, I was probably tired. I wasn't miserable at all. Yeah. I go, I was probably tired when they got shots of me in the bus. A lot of times they do that late in the day. I'd been up since 5 in the morning eating breakfast and then doing appearances and signings all day long. So then they'd come in the bus with the camera crew to, let's get some outtakes and reflect on the day. And I was like a zombie. So I said, I was probably exhausted. But
plus wrestling too, I guess you were probably doing on this tour, right?
No, they took me out of the wrestling.
Okay.
There's no way. I was literally, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
I was on the bus doing appearances from, I get up at 5 in the morning and literally till dark.
Wow.
Maybe run to a gym and get an hour workout. It was literally all day long, every day.
If you had an hour to work out and you were in a town where the Lex Express was promoted, how did you get people to leave you alone? Because I'm not anywhere near as famous as you, but people in my town bother me when I'm working out. So I can only imagine how difficult it would have been for you.
You know, I always gone around the gyms just fine. I kind of got myself in the zone. I put a pair of headphones on, and
Yeah.
and there's a kind of like the gym type of more. I don't know if the hardcore is the word, but Gold's Gym's up. The guys are all in the training themselves. So during your workout, they might ask you for something on the way in or way out, or an autograph or a picture, or something. But most people, in the types of gyms I trained in, because I needed a gym that had some free weights and things like that, they were pretty respectful of letting me get my workout in, for sure.
Okay, that's good. So the Lex Express went for a time period that was supposed to happen, I guess, and then it just ended. So it was never supposed to be an ongoing thing.
That was just for the SummerSlam.
Okay.
Lexus. But people ask me all the time, what happened to your bus? I go, I don't know. Maybe they turned it back in. I don't know. People thought I thought it was like my bus. It's funny.
Yeah. Now, Ludwig Borga, everyone remembers that feud. He was kind of a controversial character in his later years, but what was your experience like working with him?
Ludwig and I got along fine. I don't know if we were the best matchup in the ring, because he worked strong and I worked strong.
Yeah.
So, but outside of the ring, and he liked to go to the gym. We used to go to the gym together and stuff. So we got along good outside of the ring. But so, yeah, I think that might not have been the best match. It was a good idea, the premise of it, but I don't think our work, we were both relatively inexperienced, and he worked strong. And guys who would put over my strength usually end up being a little bit better match, because one guy's got to highlight the other, kind of. And experience-wise, that was kind of a tough matchup for both of us. But I always got along good, and I liked Ludwig. We always got along well.
And what about Tatanka?
Oh, he was great to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see him all the time still now at events and things, and great guy and fun to work with, and yeah, no issues there. He was fun to work with.
His chops didn't bother you?
Not at all. After Nate, the chops didn't bother me whatsoever.
I can imagine.
Yeah, Nate used to make my chest bleed the entire summer when I'd be every night with him in the ring. My chest had scabs all over it, so from those chops, busted me open.
And towards the end of your WWE run, you were teaming with Davey Boy Smith. I understand you guys were friends even before that. Do you want to just talk a little bit about him?
Yeah, we hit it off from day one. Once again, the gym thing, working out, and he came in and he looked incredible. And we immediately hit it off. Brett introduced us, because I have friends with Brett and Owen, and we ended up traveling all the time together. And I got to know his family. And we when we were in Florida, I'd stay with Davey at his house. When we went to England, they took all the guys in the bus. They let Davey drive his Jaguar around. I stayed with Davey at his mom and dad's house, and we just became great friends. Great guy, great talent. You talk about being massively over in England. Oh my gosh, unbelievable. Wow. So we had a wonderful friendship. I really miss Davey. Great sense of humor, incredible guy.
And you were teaming with him before you departed. What made you actually switch? Because I understand you took a pay cut when you switched over to WCW. I
did. I was looking to actually renegotiate my contract with WB. It was just a business thing. So when your contract runs up WB at the time, you had to give a 90-day notice. Didn't mean you were leaving. Just meant you wanted to redo your deal. You just didn't want to roll over. So I wanted to be able to do maybe some things in the fitness endeavor, because the money back then, it was always good for me. But I thought maybe I could do some things outside of wrestling, workout wise, and make some extra money. Maybe doing commercials. I didn't know, but I wanted the flexibility in my contract, and so I gave my 90-day notice, because I didn't normally do that. But Vince and I were negotiating through it. My 90-day contract ran out, but Vince and I had such a good personal relationship that we went on for months after that with the lawyers. It wasn't between Vince and I, but the lawyers are working that out, the language in the contract. And it was kind of dragging out a little bit, and I just had a happen chance conversation with Sting. I didn't even know they were going to start a new show. Right. And I told him, and it came up a conversation that my contract was up and I was no longer under contract with WWE. He goes, wait a second, Sting almost like dropped the phone. You're working at WWE right now and you're not under contract? I go, no, my contract, I gave a 9-day notice and expired a couple months back. He was like, you're kidding me. I go, no. So he called Eric Bischoff and the rest is history. I ended up being the surprise guy on Monday Nitro in Minneapolis.
Now, Bruce told a different story, so I just wanted to get your opinion on that. He said that J.J. Dillon was continuously trying to get you to re-sign, and you kept saying you were going to and putting him off. And I guess that's why, in his opinion, J.J. may have had some heat with you after that. But
boy, J.J. never mentioned that to me. We're good friends now. We see each other quite often. I'm not aware of that. I did most of my negotiations was through a lawyer.
Okay.
So if there were, JJ might have had a problem with what was going on in negotiations, because negotiations sometimes can be tenuous and frustrating.
Right.
I was a little frustrated, but really the opportunity with a new show that I didn't even know about, Monday Nitro, came up all last minute.
Right.
I'd never planned. I totally planned on re-signing. I wasn't putting anybody off at all. I was planning on re-signing with WWE.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because this podcast, I'm surprised you haven't heard about it, but it was all about you. They talked about your career for 70 minutes, I think it was.
Okay.
I listened to it on the way down.
Oh, I got you. But everybody's perspective can be different, right?
Yeah.
JJ's, he might have been very frustrated with my attorney.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to get the right language in there. My attorney was, not me. My attorney was the one guiding me.
Right.
It was just a business thing. But I wasn't like leading anybody on and like negotiating with WWE, WCW at the time at all. That all happened in a matter of like a couple of weeks. I went from thinking I was going to re-sign with WWE to walking out on Nitro in a matter of like a week and a half. It all happened. And that quick.
And you wrestled in New Brunswick, Canada the night before. Was that your last scheduled match, or was there other matches that WWE was expecting you to do?
Once again, I was not under contract.
Okay.
So I was on night-to-night basis anyways.
Right.
But but one of the disappointing things was I wasn't able to give notice.
Right.
That was part of the agreement, that Eric Bischoff wanted it to be a surprise if I came to WCW. And Eric Bischoff, I had heard, wasn't a big Lex Luger fan. So that's why he wanted to test was I full of myself? My reputation was being kind of arrogant. So he kind of thought I'll lowball him and see if he balks on the money. See if he really would like to come back here and work with us. I know Sting, you love him. He's one of your best friends. But, and Eric, I said, man, I'd love to be a part of that and get to come back and be with my best friend Sting, and got a new show going. So, and boy, it worked out good. But I definitely had great misgivings about Matsuda, the way he taught me in wrestling. It wasn't a thing of real character and integrity that I did with Vince, not giving me notice. And if I had done it over again now, even though it worked out literally good with me with WCW, I would have told Eric that I would have to give notice and talk to Vince. And if the stipulation was to just walk off his house show and the next night be in a ring with WCW, I would like to think I wouldn't do that. Now we all have things people realize behind the scenes, taking care of our family and taking the best opportunity, but I would have wanted to do it with character and integrity. And Vince and I were close outside of the ring. So that was, even back then, I had a lot of turmoil over that, doing it that way.
What did you hear from the WWE side? Because obviously there was probably still pay that they owed you. You probably had some contact after. Did you hear any feedback to what happened?
Yeah, they said, we're not going to pay you anything. So that was the feedback. You're with them now, and if you want the money, sue us.
Did you?
I did not.
I see.
I decided best to move on. I looked into what it would take to try, and to sum it up, it would have been a long line.
How much did they owe you?
Oh, I don't know. There was some pay-per-view money and some marketing money, I'm sure.
The house show that you just
I'd have no idea what that would have added up to.
I see. And Bruce...
Nothing huge, no huge like a sum of money.
Okay.
Or anything like that.
Bruce apparently said Pat Patterson's reaction to it was to say, well, he's their problem now.
That sounds like Pat. That sounds like Pat. That's good. I like that.
Now,
That's definitely possible. That sounds like Pat. That's a good one. I had never heard that before. That's good, Devin. I like that.
And
That sounds like Pat.
What I noticed when you debuted on Nitro, you looked like the old Lex Luger, which amazed me because you had just been on WWE TV, and there was a distinct difference in your look. It seemed like your hair had magically grown.
No, I'd already started growing my hair out a little bit, but that had nothing to do with me because it all happened a week and a half. I decided I was going to grow my hair out a little bit.
Okay.
At WB, so that had nothing to do with it. But I definitely felt comfortable back with Stinger and the guys back in WCW. That's kind of where
you looked like
I started in Florida, but I felt comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And what was it like dealing with Hogan? Because I guess you had probably met him in WWE, but this was the first time you're actually having a confrontation with him in the ring and working with him.
Yeah, I hardly knew him at all. And the first night didn't go well because when we got nose to nose on the Nitro, we went to commercial break. And to come back out of it, we were still nose to nose. And the camera guys were in, go, okay, we're off for whatever it was, a minute or two. So I broke character a little bit when you're nose to nose, and there was a live crowd there. And Hulkster is all business about his business. I'd never been around him. So I kind of smirked at him. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and goes, hey, brother, knock that smile off. He goes, take that smile off your face, I'll knock it off. And I tried to walk up to him afterwards, he kind of blew me off. I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Hogan, sir. I'm like, I didn't mean to. He goes, that's okay, man, but you don't ever break character out there. That's taking money out of my pocket, he said. Walked away. I knew he was mad at me. So I went home and told my wife, I go, boy, here my first night at WCW, and I just ticked off Hulk Hogan. I was like, oh my gosh, what a dumb thing to do. But I walked up, the next week at TV, we're in Florida somewhere, the second Nitro, and had some stuff I was going to do with him on camera, but I found him in his dressing room and knocked, and we had a nice discussion. So I never wanted to disrespect. I thought we were off camera. I understand totally where you were coming from, and I just want to apologize. I go, I didn't mean any disrespect to you or the business, but at the same time, I want to apologize. He was very gracious, and we got along great. From that moment on, we got along great. I mean, obviously, he put the belt on me.
Yeah, which is what I was
in
going to ask. In '97,
so we obviously got along really well outside of the ring, and I had enormous respect for him, obviously, and he had enough respect for me, obviously. He could have done that with anybody, and he gave me the honor, so that was huge. Acknowledgement for him.
Wow. And were you surprised that night? I understand you found out just before you walked out to the ring that you were going to win the title.
I couldn't believe it. We knew that they'd gotten heat left us laying for like months on end. Once in a while Sting would come out at the end, but I didn't know that Eric and Hogan thought, well, we need to give maybe a little bone for the guys we're beating up every week because we're heat. We got lots of heat. Let's give the fans a little bone. So they did that deal with me winning the belt at Nitro, then he'd take it back at the pay-per-view the following weekend. That was the phrase he used, we got to give the fans a little bone. And the fans, man, what a response that night in Detroit. Do it live on a Nitro. Nobody saw that coming. I didn't know till almost right before I went to the ring.
So I guess you became friends with Elizabeth because she was brought back to be with Ric Flair at some point in WCW, and you probably had interactions with her. Not
a lot. I mean, you got to know, between the crews at those things and the production people and all the wrestlers, and they started bringing a lot of women in. So it would be passing the hall and hey Liz, I called her Liz, and that was about it. For the first couple of years I was back at least. And she only came to TVs. I was on the road all the time wrestling, house shows, and I'd see her on a Monday night, and every guy at the hotel afterwards, and at the hotel afterwards, maybe have a couple beers or something, but never had a lot of interaction with her at all. First few years there, to be honest with you, other than hey, how you doing? That was about it.
So when did you start developing the relationship? Because obviously you had a family, but you were on the road all the time, and it was a real party atmosphere, from what I understand, in those days.
It was, and I know now that there's no such thing as innocent workplace flirtations, but it started out as that, and it developed. We developed a relationship we didn't think anybody knew, and then we actually got put together to work together, which wasn't my idea, but it was the idea of the booking people, and so now we were together on some house shows as well, and developed in the relationship that we liked hanging out together, and it was like a workplace relationship.
I see. So
it developed slowly over time, over a period of like a year or so.
At what point did it actually start affecting your home life?
Well, probably immediately without me even realizing it. But obviously, I was a married man, and she was married at the time. So something neither of us, looking back in retrospect now through different set of eyes, had no business doing, period. But it happened, and I'm sure it affected my home life. She ended up moving to Atlanta, and so things escalated from that point on, especially once WCW got bought out. She was living in Atlanta, and things developed even more along the lines after that.
Were you still under contract when it was bought out? Did you have some time left on your contract?
I did. I had a couple of years left, full pay, which was probably for me not a good thing. I probably should have stayed busy and wrestled. Too much time and money in my hands at the time. So that's where the drugs and the partying really escalated. I had time off, and
so you were
didn't have to go to work. And,
yeah.
And you know that the drug thing, the pills and the alcohol escalated slowly over a number of years. I never thought I had an issue with it. I thought I was so disciplined in my training and eating and everything in the gym that I don't have any issues with drugs or alcohol. You know what I mean? 'Cause I'm Lex, you know, so it. So.
Was it your wife finding out about Elizabeth that ended the marriage, or was it the drug and alcohol issue?
Combination of all of those, for sure. Drugs, the alcohol. My wife tried to give me a second and a third chance when she found out about Elizabeth, and I was unrepentant.
Did Macho Man ever have any issue with you dating her when you guys were still working for WCW?
Never. Macho and I had a great relationship. He never expressed anything, even a tinge of that around me. We always continued to have a good, jovial, fun friendship inside and outside of the ring. From the way Liz had explained it to me at the time, she had remarried. He had a bunch of girlfriends for years. They had really moved on, both of them. So, yeah, Randy never expressed anything, that he was upset or anything like that, if that's what you mean.
Was she already into the pills and stuff before she started dating you, or did you kind of?
I get asked that question a lot. I can't speak for her because I wasn't ever really around her much before I met her. So when I met her, she would drink a little bit, and she would, like a lot of people in business, we'd pop a few pills or something once in a while. To what extent she did or didn't prior to, or if she ever had issues with that before she met me, I don't know.
So at the time of her passing, were you guys both divorced?
I was separated and she was divorced.
Okay. And the domestic abuse allegations,
right.
Did anything really come of that, or what was that all about? Was that just the
we had an argument at the townhouse I was at. We had parked in the garage door was open. I don't know what the neighbor felt felt she saw, but she had called the police, and we both explained to the police. Liz had a mark on her face from walking the dogs like a week prior, a scrape mark. But when the police came, the one police guy, we kind of both felt that he wanted to take me to jail. Liz and I both felt that way. And we both told him that we had 2 dogs, a German Shepherd and a Husky, and they could get frisky with each other, and they wrapped him on her leg, and she fell down, had an abrasional mark on her face now she'd been crying because we'd argued that night. It wasn't a physical thing.
Right.
But she was crying, but even the officers were there that night when they came out and the guy cuffed me. They're all like, well, this is one of those calls from a nosy neighbor, and we'll be out of here in a few minutes. There's probably a dozen cops outside, and the cop station was right down the street, and they were all hanging out at Lex Luger's place. So, so we were both Liz and I were both shocked.
You were extremely famous at that point too.
Yeah,
so.
and I was almost 24 years of marriage, and believe me, I was not at the time, the way things went down, my kids, and especially my wife, they were no big fan of mine at the time, to put it mildly, and rightly so.
Right.
And even they were like, on the domestic disturbance thing, they were like, my gosh, Dad, you're a mess right now. We hate your guts, but they know 24 plus years of relationship, never any sign or a hint of that kind of thing.
Right.
So it would have been, so out of character for me. Even they're like, you're a lot of things, but not that. Was what came off even my ex-wife. But it happened. It was a tumultuous time. A lot of drama goes on when you're making bad decisions in life. Things go downhill. They go down quickly. So that's all it's kind of wrapped into all the horrible things that happened in a very, very tragic time.
Because she passed away not too much long after that.
And actually, that's where they dropped the charges. I don't know about forensics, but apparently when they checked her out, it's Cobb County, I was on their radar where this all happened outside of Atlanta. And I guess what my lawyer told me was that when they did the autopsy, the guy, I don't know, who does the forensics said that was an abrasional type injury. That wasn't a impact like kind of injury.
Right.
And which confirmed what we had both told him, the officer, that had happened at the scene, but he arrested me anyways. But once you're arrested, you're arrested. So, and they dropped the charges based on, it was what my lawyer told me. Because I don't think Cobb County would have dropped any charges against me at the time. They had me on 17, I think, felony counts on drugs because the amount of drugs I had at my place at the time.
Was that for selling, or was that you consumed a lot?
It was my stash. I just re-upped my stash, I called it. I didn't want to buy like drugs on a weekly basis, so I'd buy like a 6-month supply or a year's supply at once because I had the money to do it, the wherewithal. So I just bought a bunch of stuff.
And what was it exactly that Miss Elizabeth had taken that night?
I never got saw a toxicology report. I wouldn't be. It was alcohol and a couple different pills. I mean, she seemed fine that night. We were watching movies together, and she was standing in the microwave next to me 1 minute. I took her food over to her and was heating mine up in the microwave. The next minute, she wasn't responding or breathing.
Wow.
I was total shock.
And you were probably on pills at that time too, so you were probably...
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like... I was making food, and I wasn't like... I had messed up a lot back then. I wasn't really messed up.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like she was all that messed up at the time. So it was a shock. I was like, when she didn't respond, I just immediately dialed 911, and they were there within, like it seemed like a minute and a half, because they were right down the street, like I told you.
Yeah.
And they were there, and when they worked on her and ran her out the ambulance, I said, this isn't good. But at the same time, I thought, well, they got her now. She's going to make it. So what went through my mind. Didn't find out till later what happened. she didn't make it. But they rushed her out the paramedics were working on her and rushing her out the ambulance. I thought, we always think we're going to make it, right? Which might speak to youngsters now. So if I tell them, you just never know.
Yeah.
One night, too much of a certain thing, or your body responds different. Drugs are a Russian roulette.
And that
very, very sad.
That
very,
didn't
very
actually clean you up then either, did it? You still had to go through a few years of.
No, it got worse for me, for sure.
What was the lowest point of that whole period in your life? Obviously, her passing has to be up there.
That was a low point in the jail cell at the time. The only time I actually thought of taking my own life. I thought maybe if I got on top of a cement barrier, I was in an ISO cell. Put my hands behind my back and fell head first because it was all cement down below. I might be able to take myself out. Thankfully, I didn't do that, but I thought about it. That was a low point. And, find out what happened with Liz and up on 17 felony counts, and it was like I felt a lot of weight on me.
Yeah.
A lot of darkness that night, but I had a lot of dark times. I'm a living, breathing miracle of God to still be alive. For the next few years, it went from bad to worse with drugs and alcohol, and one bad decision after another, for sure.
And it was religion and treatment that ultimately got you over that, from what I understand.
Treatment helped, but it didn't work right away for me. It was definitely on April 23rd of 06 when I met Jesus, and I had a road to Damascus experience, and he rescued me. He delivered me. Over a period of a couple of years, he gave me delivered me from all drugs and alcohol, and I've been clean ever since, and my health is great, and I'm very thankful for that.
What was different about that particular instant experience you had from being an atheist all your life to others? Because I'm sure you've had some religious interactions prior to that.
Some, but like I said, I was an atheist most of my adult life, and it was, people ask me what was the biggest difference before April 20th of 06, April 23rd of 06 and after, or just be just a peace that surpasses all understanding I talk about that I had. I never had, no matter how much money, fame, I always thought that there had to be more. I always chased the creation rather than the creator, not realizing that the thing missing in my life was a relationship with the creator of all things, and that's God. So once I had that relationship secured with him through Jesus for what he did at the cross, I had an immediate peace, and then a respect for my body. That's part of God's creation, and just that's what's real key for me. I really can't take the credit of God turning my life around.
Do you think the reason why you're not yet in the WWE Hall of Fame could possibly be because of animosity from that Nitro?
I'm with the ambassador program now, so if there was animosity, I don't think I'd be an ambassador for WWE. So I don't know. It'd be a real honor if I ever get in. Someday there's a lot of great wrestlers that aren't in there yet. So someday I ever get it, it'd be great. If I don't, I don't. But it'd be a real honor if I ever do, of course.
Now, there's not a lot of time left, but I am going to ask you some fan questions.
Okay.
We might have to do a part 2 down the road since you're not too far from me, and there's still a lot we didn't cover in this interview.
That'd be great, Devin.
I'll pop in some fan questions now. If UFC was an option in the 80s, would you have considered that as a career?
No. I wouldn't want to get beat up for real. We took enough beating in wrestling with bumps in the ring. I wouldn't want to get beat up for real for a living. I don't think I would have been interested. But it wasn't as big then as it is now.
No.
But that would have been more for guys like the Steiner brothers or Dr. Death, or some of the guys had that real. I was a football player. I wasn't a shooter. It would have been more, I think, an option for the wrestling guys like those guys rather than somebody like me.
Who was the hardest opponent to torture rack?
Surprisingly, some of the bigger guys, like I had Big Show up in the rack. He wasn't difficult at all. Of course, he helped a lot. People think it's the biggest guys, but sometimes the shorter, heavier guys were harder to get up. One of the guys was Joey Baggs, one of the guys I used to work with on TV a lot. He was shorter and heavier and bottom heavy, so he was difficult to get up. And I had one guy, I wrestled live on TV one time that, I'm not recalling his name right now, but he was difficult to get up. So, and you'd be surprised, some of the bigger guys were easier to get because they were a little taller. So the distance was shorter. A matter of physics, sort of.
What was your all-time favorite match?
Wow. That would be hard to pick. I had a lot of great matches I worked with every top guy in the business. That's a great question. I think my first world title match I had with Rick Nate in Baltimore was very memorable. The world title. Crowd response, I really remember that. My first match with Bret Hart was up in Winnipeg, Canada house show. I always remember that match. We clicked right away, both in the ring and personally. My match with Hogan in Detroit when we switched the title, that was huge. Man, there's so many. I wrestled almost 5,000 matches, so I get asked the question a lot. It's a good question, but it's really hard to say to just pick one match.
Did you enjoy being a heel or a face more?
There was a tag match against the Steiners in a pay-per-view we had one time, Sting and I, because we were all such good friends.
Yeah.
We had a really good match, and it felt really good afterwards. That was another match that really stands out to all four of us, really.
Did you prefer being heel or face?
I enjoyed both. I think it was easier to be a heel, because I always felt it was easier to get people ticked off at you than it is to get them to love you. So as a behind the scenes, I felt that it was easier and a little more fun to be a heel than trying to make people love you. But I enjoyed both.
Who would you ideally want to induct you into the WWE Hall of Fame if you were inducted?
That's a good question. There's a lot of guys, but probably if he would do it, definitely Stinger would be I think a great choice. It would mean a lot to both of us, really.
Do you still follow wrestling?
I do, definitely.
Any favorites?
Gosh, these guys are so talented now. My gosh, these guys do stuff that I never dreamed of. They're so athletic and they look great. Their costuming and there's so many good ones now. Obviously, John Cena's had a great career. Not many guys left in my generation, but there's so many good young talents now. That'd be really difficult to pick just one.
Do you have any stories about Haku Ming, also known as Ming?
Great guy. We loved having him around, and he was like a bodyguard when we go out. I've heard a lot of stories about him. I worked with him. We got along great, and he was a joy to work with. But I've heard probably the same stories everybody else has, that they called it the goozle, where he grabbed guys by the throat and they'd go unconscious. It's for real. I've heard a lot of unbelievable stories about that. Thankfully, he never did it to me for real. Where he grabbed guys by the throat, unbelievable. What a man's man, for sure.
What's your opinion on Dusty Rhodes?
He was a real mentor, and he gave me my finish, my character when I came to WCW, the backbreaker. Spent a lot of time with me on interviewing, and just I have a debt of gratitude to him. He's mentored a lot of guys, and a real credit to the industry for sure.
Why was your TNA run so short? Did that have to do with your injury or other reasons?
TNA, at that time in my life, I had a lot of other stuff that we prior talked about. My mind wasn't really on wrestling at that point. It was on staying alive at the time. I was in a life and death struggle with drugs and alcohol.
Did you ever try to get back in with WWE before WCW closed? Any like contract negotiations during that period?
No, one time I left back in '95.
Yeah.
When we got bought out, my contract was for 2 more years, guaranteed. So we never had any discussions. But then obviously my life had completely fallen apart. I wasn't even, to be honest with you, thinking about wrestling at that point.
What's your opinion as a Christian on how Ric Flair lived his personal life?
I love Nate, and he's one of the most dynamic, charismatic guys I've ever been around. And you know, Sting and I and Nikita and the guys that are believers now in the business that love Nate to death, we're always hopeful and prayerful. We always say to each other, man, if we could get Nate over to our side, what a testimony. We call it a testimony, which means our story of what we once were and did to what we are now because of Jesus. We're always like, man, if we could. So we're all still very prayerful. We all still love Nate for just who he is, and we love him just the way he is. But we'd love to see him come over to our side, for sure. What a testimony that man would have! Wow.
And
well, he could win a lot of people to Christ. He's got the gift, right?
That's for sure.
Imagine those interview skills being used for the kingdom. My gosh.
The preachers and pastors are the
Be
best.
the next Billy Graham.
Guys. Yeah, exactly.
We'd love to have Rick on our side.
Without
in that regard, we're all on the same side. But I mean, in that regard, we'd love to have Rick on board. Come on, Rick.
And this is another question. As a Christian, what do you think of transgender wrestling now that they're doing in this new All Elite Wrestling company?
You know, I haven't heard of that. What is that?
Men dressed up as females, wrestling as females against females.
You know, I look at TV and wrestling as an entertainment business. So, I mean, I don't have I'm not like a legalistic like people over here with the Bible. I know that they try to always mirror wrestling with our current times and what's going on in the world. So that stuff's going on in the world. So I understand, and they're out to draw money and get television ratings. So I understand where they're coming from with that kind of stuff. If that makes sense. Doesn't mean I would definitely necessarily condone that myself, but I mean, I understand where they're coming from.
Favorite TV show?
Wow. Favorite TV show? I would have to say right now, it would be, now that I'm here with the precious opportunity of hanging out with my mom the last few years and hanging out together, my 86-year-old mom, she beats me most of the time because she's a wordsmith and like a straight A student all the way through high school and college. But Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, interesting.
Hey Pat, hey Vanna, you ever see this? Oh yeah, we love Wheel of Fortune.
Wow, I wouldn't have expected that.
Oh yeah.
What happened with Main Event Fitness?
Sting sold out a partnership a few years before me. Then I sold out to my other 2 partners that I had a few years after that. And it was a business that I'm not sure what they did with that after that. It was up to them, obviously.
What's your favorite Horseman Road story?
Wow, that would be impossible to zero in on. My gosh. I'd have to think about that one. Nothing. We had so much fun together.
Town that you got the biggest pops in?
Wow. Baltimore was always a good town for me. That's the first one that pops into my head.
Being on the cover of the WWE magazine with Michael Jordan, what was that all about?
Oh, that was cool. I was at a conference with like top athletes from every sports endeavor, and for pro wrestling, I was chosen, and I got to hang out with all those guys for a weekend and play golf together, and we did a bunch of photos in front of the Magic Kingdom Castle. It was down at Disney World, so it was a great weekend, and loved hanging out with those guys, and sure makes for a memorable wrestling magazine cover for sure.
And fans, this is going to be the last question I'm asking because I'm out of time here with Lex, but we covered a lot of what you're asking in the full interview, which will be posted in high quality. But the last fan question I'll ask is, what was your favorite wrestling run? Could be in any company.
I'd have to say 3 phases. Obviously, the run with the 4 Horsemen really stands out as a highlight, that whole period. And it was all new then, so that's very special. Lex Express was an incredible experience. Partnering with Davey Boy was huge as tag team. And then obviously the whole Nitro experience and the world title win with Hogan live on TV was another big, but that Monday Nitro experience as a whole was, so really my whole 15-year career, I felt like, I said earlier in the interview, like the 4th of July fireworks. It all was, the wrestling aspect of my life was amazing, and I'm very thankful for that, and look back with many, many fond, cherished memories, for sure.
And if fans want to follow you, you're on Twitter at Genuine Lex Luger.
That's the only thing I'm on. Anything else there is not me, but it's at Genuine Lex Luger.
And anything you want to close this off with? As I said, I think we're going to need a part 2 because we only really scratched the surface. But is there any message that you would like to leave the fans with to close this interview off?
Not other than, I look back at my career when I got into wrestling, not really knowing wrestling. Sometimes I thought you, the fans, were like crazy. But then I realized that wrestling was so unique. We had every socioeconomic, ethnic, racial, the diversity of wrestling fans, and we all, between the guys who wrestle and the fans, I see now, in hindsight, sometimes in the moment you don't realize it, but it's really hit me what a special family we are. And when I go to interact with the fans now, there's so much love, and it really does, we feel like we're a family. When I see the guys and the fans, and I don't think there's anything like wrestling, and I just want to let the fans know I love them. I love when I get to see them when I'm out and about, and it's a really special, pro wrestling is very, very special, very dear, and then the fans are, and the guys. It's hard to describe it even really. It's really special.